Today I want to talk about something you've probably felt or seen, even if you didn't have a name for it. Zero-sum thinking. You know that feeling when your sibling gets a bigger piece of cake and you instantly feel like you got cheated? Or maybe at work when a colleague gets praised and there's that little voice whispering, "Well, that means less recognition for me." Or even scrolling through headlines about international trade, where it sounds like one country winning automatically means another country is losing. That's what zero-sum thinking is, that underlying feeling, that assumption that life is a giant competition over a fixed amount of stuff, whether it's cake, praise, jobs, or even love, and it shapes a lot more of our world than we might realize. So, what exactly is zero-sum thinking? The term actually comes from game theory. Think about a game like poker or tennis. There's a fixed pot of money or only one winner. For someone to win, someone else has to lose. The gains and losses perfectly balance out, meaning they sum to zero. Zero-sum thinking is when we take that logic, your gain is my loss, and apply it to situations where it doesn't actually fit. It's like we walk around with this mental model that the world operates with a fixed pie of everything desirable. Wealth, success, opportunities, happiness, even adulation and affection. If someone gets a bigger slice than us, the assumption is there's automatically less for everyone else. It puts us in this constant competitive win-lose mindset. But here's the catch, and this is really important. Most of life isn't a zero-sum game. That's where the zero-sum fallacy comes into play. It's a cognitive bias, a mental shortcut, where we incorrectly assume a situation is zero-sum when it's not. Think about it. Many situations aren't just win-lose. Sometimes everyone can win together. That's called a positive sum outcome or a win-win. Let's imagine two friends collaborating on a project. They might both end up with something better than they could have created alone, or unfortunately, sometimes everyone can lose, a negative sum outcome. Think of, for example, a pointless argument that leaves everyone feeling bad. The zero-sum fallacy makes us blind to these other possibilities, especially the win-win ones. So if it's often wrong, why do we fall into this trap so easily? Well, there are a few ideas. One compelling theory looks back at our evolutionary history. For a huge chunk of human existence, almost all resources were genuinely scarce. Food, territory, status, these things were often limited, and competition for them was fierce. In that environment, someone else's gain often did mean your loss. So zero-sum thinking might be a kind of mental leftover, a default setting that was useful for survival back then, but isn't always accurate or even useful now. It's also tied to what psychologists call a scarcity mindset, just the general feeling that there isn't enough to go around, which naturally fuels competition. And sometimes it's just easier to think that way. Figuring out complex situations takes time and effort. Assuming it's a simple win-lose contest is a mental shortcut, even if it leads to mistakes. Plus, let's be honest here, our culture often emphasizes competition. Winner-take-all scenarios are everywhere. Okay, let's look at where this fallacy pops up in everyday life, because it's everywhere once you start noticing it. Take economics. You hear it constantly in debates about international trade. Politicians talk about winning or losing based on trade deficits, but basic economics tells us that voluntary trade is usually positive sum. Why is this? It's because both sides trade willingly, expecting to be better off. I value your apples more than my oranges. You value my oranges more than your apples. So when we trade, we both win based on our subjective value. Trade doesn't just redistribute a fixed pie. It can actually grow the pie through specialization and efficiency. The same fallacy fuels the lump of labor idea, the belief that there's a fixed number of jobs. So if immigrants take jobs, native-born workers must lose out. But economies aren't static. People create demand, new industries emerge, and immigrants often contribute significantly to economic growth. It's not a fixed pie of jobs, although an argument could be made that the pie of government benefits is going to not grow sufficiently to handle those who choose not to contribute to overall economic growth. And zero-sum thinking can even hit close to home in our personal lives. Ever felt that pang of sibling rivalry, fearing that parental love given to your brother or sister means less love for you? That's applying zero-sum logic to love, which most parents would say isn't finite at all. It often expands. Or in the workplace, seeing a colleague's promotion only as your loss, rather than potentially part of team success or even an inspiration. Did you know that even as consumers, we can get into this mode of thinking? Marketing studies have shown that people often prefer a laundry detergent that only removes stains over one that both removes stains and prevents static, assuming it must be worse at stain removal if it does other things too. We tend to assume that resources like cleaning power are always fixed. So what's the big deal? Why does this matter? Well, this zero-sum mindset is actually pretty damaging. First, it kills cooperation. If you think every interaction's a battle where someone has to lose, why would you cooperate? It pushes us towards conflict, defensiveness, and mistrust. Think about awful workplaces where toxic competitive office politics is the rule instead of collaboration and cooperation. I could easily rant about the evils of zero-sum methods like stack ranking employees, but I won't digress into that. Second, it leads to bad decisions and missed opportunities. If we automatically assume a situation is win-lose, we might not even look for potential win-win solutions. We miss chances for mutual gain in negotiations, in business, in relationships, and in policy making. Third, it can be used to justify prejudice. If you believe one group's success must come at another's expense, it becomes easier to resent successful groups, or vice versa. The good news is we aren't doomed to think this way. We can challenge this mindset. But you might ask how? It starts with awareness. Just recognizing when you're defaulting to that fixed pie assumption is huge. Ask yourself, is this situation really win-lose, or is there potential for something else? Then actively look for value creation. Remember that wealth, success, and even happiness aren't always fixed resources to be divided. They can be generated, created, expanded. Innovation creates new possibilities. Collaboration can produce more than the sum of its parts. Next, practice perspective taking. Try to understand why the other person might see things differently or why they might value something you don't. Recognizing different subjective values is key to seeing how trade or compromise can benefit everyone involved. And finally, consciously shift focus towards cooperation and finding mutual benefits. Look for the win-win. It's not about being naive. After all, sometimes competition is real, and sometimes situations are actually zero-sum. And yes, some people are total ultra-competitive jackholes, but the fallacy is in assuming that everything always is. By challenging that assumption, we open ourselves up to a much wider range of possibilities. So it's getting over this pervasive idea that life is a fixed pie, since that thinking leads into the fallacy of seeing competition everywhere, even where cooperation could thrive. It might be rooted in our past, but it often limits our present and future, fueling conflict and blinding us to opportunities for mutual benefit and growth. My challenge for you is to just notice it. Notice it in the news, notice it in your workplace, maybe even notice it in your own thoughts. Ask yourself, is this really a zero-sum game, or could the pie actually get bigger for everyone? Shifting away from that limiting mindset isn't just about being nicer, it's about being smarter, more creative, and ultimately building a world with more potential for everyone to win. Let me know what your thoughts are on zero-sum thinking in the comments. Also, let me know if you like this animation method I'm trying out in this video versus the driving around videos. I value your input. And do the like and subscribe thing to prove that YouTube isn't a zero-sum game. Thanks for watching all the way to the bitter end.